Good morning, everyone. My name is Erickson. Our first question goes out to the Polish Consul General, Mr. Krzysztof Dzieciak. Consul General, yes, I see you. Our first question for today is, Poland and Hungary have been partners in vetoing budget proposals designed to limit the rise of illiberal democracies in the EU. What would you say to the critics of the Visegrád group that exist to create a bloc of like-minded illiberal democracies that can fight EU attempts to protect European liberal democracy? Mr. Consul General, the answer is yours.
I will refer again to the communist era. The Soviets called their political system socialist democracy. Back then, we were fighting for our freedom. To us, that meant also democracy. Democracy without any adjectives. No socialist, no liberal, no conservative. Just democracy, meaning the rule of the people through democratic process. In this question, I see the argument that the EU budget was designed to limit the rise of illiberal democracies. No, the budget is aimed to further develop member states of the European Union. And in this edition, also to effectively cope with pandemic. Poland and Hungary were ready to veto the budget only if there were added political criteria, which, according to the European treaties, are not supposed to be involved.
Thank you so much for the answer in this question that a lot of students have. Now, I would like to pass on for the next question to my colleague and friend, Emma. You have the floor.
Perfect. So this next question is actually for Professor Robert Austin. So somebody from our audience wanted to know, what are your thoughts on the mini Schengen area in the Western Balkans? Can it replicate the success of the Visegrád group regarding the EU?
For the audience out there, Emma's one of my students. She's student, and so is Erickson, and it's so nice to see the professional standard these people maintain, and special thanks to all the organizers. Emma, that's a really good question. First, let's say the Visegrád group as a V3 and then a V4 was really inspirational for our friends in the Balkans, and I know your roots are in the Balkans too, so I colleagues about that in the Balkans in advance of this presentation to say, like, what role did V4 play? And they said, oh, they also studied very carefully something I mentioned called the Nordic Council, which is the Nordic countries. But what I want to stress is that with Central Europe, I was always glasses half full. With Balkans, I'm a little bit more glasses half empty, because I've seen attempts at regional cooperation that have failed. And there's still so many challenges in the Balkans, particularly, like, if you think about it, just think of recognition of Kosovo. So you have 5 EU states that don't recognize Kosovo, and with all due respect to Slovakia, Slovakia is one of them, and they're represented here today. So I take that up with the ambassador someday. But moreover, Serbia doesn't recognize Kosovo, Bosnia doesn't recognize Kosovo. But my last point, Emma, is that what I found inspirational about the 90s was the quality of leadership that the Central Europeans were blessed with. And nobody likes the history that's, great man history, but you cannot underestimate the role played by the pivotal people that I showed in the first slide, like the founders. And they articulated a vision that was so cosmopolitan and so important that I've never seen people in the Balkans, the leadership, to reach that level. Do you know what I mean, Emma? And I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel. Like, the Balkans always wanted someone like Havel, for example, and there was others great. I was always a big fan of Josef Antal, Valenza, and some of the dissidents that played such roles. They gave this regional cooperation momentum, and the Balkans, I haven't seen that. So I'm not optimistic, Emma, if that answers the question.
Our next question from the audience is, considering our time in the pandemic right now, as we think of post-pandemic era, this question is towards Consul General Jacek. In regards to the V4, is there any common V4 strategy in a post-COVID world? Could you elaborate on that, Consul General?
Well, the motto of V4 Polish presidency is back on track, which is obviously related to post-COVID situation. V4 countries cooperate in tackling the effects of the coronavirus pandemic and work together to bring socio-economic life in the region and the EU back to normal. That means implementing so-called shields that allowed companies to survive the harshest moments of the pandemic and help to keep the workplaces and other things as well. And we can observe the results already after a few months of that process. Last year, Poland had the smallest drop of GDP in Europe. This year, we'll have the highest, just after Lithuania, growth, predicted by European Commission at the level of 3.1%. The unemployment level is the lowest in Czechia, and we hold the second position. In the meantime, we fight the pandemic. It turns out, I'm bragging again, but last week, the president of European Commission, Ms. Ursula von der Leyen, in her speech at European Parliament, complimented Poland as a best example how to organize and carry out the vaccination process.
Thank you so much for your answer. Now I'd like to pass it on to Emma for a follow-up question to this one.
Perfect. So again, to the Consul General, has COVID-19 strengthened the relationships within the Visegrád group?
I'm positive that this situation has strengthened our relations. I think the key word is solidarity. It is a trademark of Poland, historically speaking, but also in reference to the present day. For instance, in January, Polish medical staff took part in a large operation of testing all Slovakians for COVID. To strengthen the cooperation on coping with pandemic, we launched last October the virtual V4 Center for COVID-19. Experts from ministries of all for our countries, ministers of health and foreign relations, meet and discuss every week the steps that need to be taken. Last week, a week ago exactly, in Jurata, Poland, we had a summit of the presidents of our countries, and tomorrow there will be another summit in Krakow with the participation of our country's prime ministers and the president of European Council, where obviously the top issue discussed will be how to cope with the pandemic.